The sound of a beer bottle shattering against concrete echoed through Murphy's tavern at 1 o'clock in the morning, sending a spray of amber glass across the worn wooden floor. Ashley Mitchell, standing barely 5 feet 4 inches in her worn black t-shirt and faded jeans, didn't flinch as she continued wiping down the bar's surface with methodical precision. The 5 Marines who had lingered past closing time weren't leaving, and she knew exactly why they'd stayed behind. "Look at this, brothers," Sergeant Blake Harrison slurred, his 6'3" frame swaying slightly as he pushed off from his bar stool. His Marine Corps uniform was disheveled, the eagle, globe, and anchor insignia crooked on his collar, whiskey fumes radiating from him like cologne. "Little lady here's got herself a seal trident tattooed on her wrist. Bet she thinks playing warrior princess gets her bigger tips from the real heroes." Ashley's hand never paused in its circular motions across the bar's surface, the cleaning rag moving in precise, overlapping patterns that left no spot untouched. Her silence seemed to embolden the group further. Corporal Mason Carter slammed his palm down on the bar, making the empty glasses jump and ring against each other. "Hey, I'm talking to you, you honor-stealing fraud. You think inking some military tattoos makes you one of us, makes you special?" The other Marines began moving with the coordinated precision of predators circling prey. Lance Corporal Ryan Foster, stocky and aggressive despite being the shortest of the men at 5 feet 10 inches, blocked the main exit with his bulk. Private First Class Connor Bradley, young and nervous but following his senior's lead, positioned himself near the emergency exit. Corporal Amber Williams, the lone female Marine in the group, tilted her head as she studied Ashley with the kind of contempt reserved for those who violated the sacred brotherhood of military service. "Pathetic," Amber spat, her voice cutting through the testosterone-heavy atmosphere. "Fake soldiers like you make real women who serve look bad. You're an insult to every female who actually earned her place." Blake took another step forward, close enough now that his alcohol-soaked breath washed over Ashley's face. His hand moved to rest on the bar, effectively boxing her in against the wall of the bottles behind her. "No one's saving you now, sweetheart. Time someone taught you a lesson about stealing military honor." Ashley finally set down the glass she'd been cleaning, her shoulders tensing slightly, the first and only sign that she registered the threat surrounding her. Her green eyes remained focused on the bar's surface, but something in her peripheral vision tracked every movement, every shift in position of the 5 Marines who thought they had her cornered. Murphy, the 70-year-old owner of the establishment and a Vietnam veteran himself, emerged from the back office where he had been counting the night's receipts. His weathered face, mapped with lines from decades of hard living and harder memories, tightened as he assessed the situation. His hand instinctively moved toward the baseball bat he kept behind the register, a relic from his playing days before the war changed everything. "Bar's closed, Marines," Murphy said, his gravelly voice carrying the authority of someone who'd seen enough violence for 3 lifetimes. "Time to head back to base." Blake didn't even turn to acknowledge him. "This is between us and the stolen valor case here, old man. Why don't you go back to your office and let us handle this?" The tension in the room thickened like humidity before a storm. Through the windows, the streetlights of the small California town cast long shadows across the empty parking lot. Camp Pendleton was only 15 minutes away, close enough that Murphy's Tavern had become the unofficial watering hole for Marines looking to blow off steam. The walls were covered with unit patches, photographs of servicemen and women, and memorabilia from conflicts spanning 5 decades. This was a place that honored real service, real sacrifice, which made the Marines' accusation all the more pointed. Ashley's fingers found the edge of the bar towel, folding it with unconscious precision into a perfect square, then unfolding and refolding it again. The movement was automatic, practiced, each fold creating exact 90-degree angles that military personnel would recognize as regulation standard. Mason stepped closer, his technical mind already formulating a challenge. Unlike Blake's brute force approach, Mason prided himself on his knowledge of military equipment and tactics. He'd been top of his class in weapons training, could field strip and reassemble any standard-issue firearm blindfolded. If this woman was really military, she'd know things only real operators knew. "So tell me, fake warrior," Mason said, pulling his Beretta M9 from its holster and placing it on the bar with deliberate slowness. "If you're such a badass Navy SEAL, you should know your way around weapons systems. Bet you don't even know what kind of ammunition this takes." Ashley's eyes flicked to the weapon for exactly 1 second. 9mm Parabellum, standard NATO round, 15-round magazine capacity, effective range 50 meters, she said quietly, her voice carrying a slight rasp, as if she wasn't used to speaking much. You've got carbon buildup on the barrel, haven't cleaned it in at least 2 weeks. The response stunned Mason into momentary silence. The other Marines exchanged glances, but Blake recovered quickly, his face reddening with increased anger rather than diminished confidence. Lucky guess. Anyone can memorize Wikipedia articles. Hey, if you're watching from a military town or have family who served, drop your location in the comments below. These stories of hidden warriors walking among us deserve to be heard. And if you believe real heroes don't need to advertise their service, hit that subscribe button right now. We've got more incredible stories of quiet professionals coming your way. Ryan Foster decided to escalate the situation in his own special way. The Lance Corporal grabbed a full pitcher of beer from a nearby table and deliberately poured it across the bar, the amber liquid spreading in a puddle that dripped onto the floor. "Oops," he said with mock innocence. "Better clean that up, janitor. That's all you really are, isn't it?" A glorified janitor playing dress-up with military ink. Ashley's response was to grab a fresh towel and begin cleaning the spill without a word. But the way she moved, economical, efficient, always keeping the threats in her peripheral vision, spoke volumes to anyone trained in situational awareness. She never turned her back fully to any of them, never left herself without at least 2 escape routes, never let her hands be occupied for more than a few seconds at a time. Connor Bradley, the youngest and most nervous of the group, fidgeted near the emergency exit. At 21, he'd only been a Marine for 18 months. Still caught between the desire to fit in with his brothers and the nagging feeling that cornering a lone woman in a bar wasn't what he'd signed up to defend. "Maybe we should just go," he suggested weakly. "It's getting late." "Shut up, Bradley," Amber snapped. "This is about respect, about honor, things you clearly don't understand yet." She moved closer to Ashley, her trained eyes studying the smaller woman's build. "Look at her, 5'4", maybe 120 pounds soaking wet. You really think someone built like that could handle SEAL training? Hell Week? The physical standards alone would break her in half." From his corner booth, Chief Petty Officer Anderson, retired after 30 years in the Navy, slowly set down his whiskey and watched the scene unfold with growing interest. He'd been coming to Murphy's for 5 years since retiring, knew most of the regulars, had seen plenty of drunk Marines acting tough. But something about the way the small bartender moved, the way she held herself, triggered recognition in the part of his brain that had been trained to identify threats and allies in combat zones around the world. Anderson pulled out his phone, his weathered fingers navigating to a military database app he still had access to through his retirement benefits. He typed in a few search parameters, his eyes flicking between his screen and the ongoing confrontation. Blake's patience, what little he had when sober and none when drunk, finally ran out. He reached across the bar and grabbed Ashley's wrist, his large hand easily encircling it. "Let me see this fake tattoo up close," he growled, yanking her arm toward him. The moment his hand made contact, several things happened simultaneously. Ashley's other hand came up in a reflexive guard position, her body automatically shifting into a combat stance despite her conscious effort to remain passive. Blake felt the unusual hardness of her forearm muscles, the kind that came from years of specialized training, not gym workouts. And most tellingly, her feet repositioned themselves into a perfect fighting stance. Left foot forward, right foot back, weight balanced on the balls of her feet, ready to move in any direction. "Interesting," Blake said, though a flicker of uncertainty crossed his features. "You've had some mall ninja self-defense classes. Won't help you here." Ashley slowly, deliberately relaxed her stance, letting Blake maintain his grip on her wrist. The SEAL Trident tattoo was partially visible, but the full design extended up her forearm, hidden by her long-sleeved shirt. Around the trident, barely visible in the bar's dim lighting, were numbers and letters that Blake couldn't quite make out. Murphy had seen enough. He pulled out his cell phone, not to call the police. Cops would take 20 minutes to arrive and probably just tell everyone to go home anyway, but to access something else. His fingers moved across the screen with surprising dexterity for his age, navigating to a secured veterans network that most people didn't even know existed. "A last chance, Marines," Murphy said, his voice carrying a different quality now, something harder and more dangerous. "Leave now, or things are going to get complicated in ways you're not prepared for." "Stay out of this, Grandpa," Ryan said dismissively. This doesn't concern you? Murphy's laugh was short and bitter. Son, everything that happens in my bar concerns me, and you have no idea what you're about to step in. But his warning fell on deaf ears. The Marines were too invested now, their egos and alcohol-fueled bravado preventing any retreat. Blake released Ashley's wrist only to grab the front of her shirt instead, bunching the fabric in his fist. You know what I think? Blake said, his face inches from Ashley's. I think you're one of those military groupies. Probably dated some sailor who told you war stories, and now you think you can wear his glory like a costume. Ashley's phone, sitting on the bar, suddenly buzzed with an incoming message. The screen lit up briefly, showing a notification from an encrypted messaging app, the kind with military-grade security that special operators used for sensitive communications. The icon was distinctive, a black trident over a gray shield, something that made Anderson's eyes widen from across the room. These devices, reinforced with titanium casing and equipped with satellite uplink capabilities that worked in the most remote locations on Earth, weren't available to civilians. They were issued exclusively to operators who might need to maintain secure communications in hostile territory. Ashley glanced at the message for exactly 2 seconds before deleting it with a practiced swipe, but Anderson had seen enough. He'd seen that same app icon on phones belonging to some very dangerous people during his time in the service. People whose job titles were classified and whose missions were never officially acknowledged. Product placement note: military-grade encrypted smartphone. Mason, meanwhile, had been studying Ashley's stance, her movements, the way she held herself. Something was nagging at him, something beyond the surface-level wrongness of the situation. He'd been trained to read body language, to identify threats, and everything about this small woman screamed danger in a way that made no logical sense. Hey, he said suddenly, a thought occurring to him. If you're really military, what's your MOS, your military occupational specialty? Ashley remained silent, but Murphy answered for her. Maybe she doesn't want to talk about her service. Ever think of that? Not everyone who has been in combat likes to advertise it. Because she hasn't been in combat, Amber insisted, though her voice carried less certainty than before. Look at her. No visible scars, no 1,000-yard stare, no hypervigilance. Real combat vets, especially SEALs, they carry that weight visibly. You can see it in their eyes. If only Amber had been paying closer attention, she would have noticed that Ashley's eyes were never still, constantly tracking movements, cataloging threats, measuring distances. She would have noticed the small scar on Ashley's neck, barely visible above her collar, consistent with shrapnel wounds. She would have noticed the way Ashley's breathing remained steady and controlled, despite 5 Marines surrounding her, the kind of autonomic control that came from operating in situations where panic meant death. Chief Anderson found what he was looking for on his phone. His breath caught as he read the partially declassified file, most of it redacted with black bars, but enough visible to understand he was looking at something extraordinary. He stood up slowly, his movement catching Murphy's attention. The 2 veterans made eye contact across the room, and Murphy nodded slightly, a confirmation of something Anderson had suspected but couldn't quite believe. Blake, oblivious to the undercurrents flowing through the room, decided to escalate further. You know what we do to people who steal valor in the Corps, he said, his grip on Ashley's shirt tightening. We make sure they never forget the lesson. Please, Ashley said quietly, speaking directly for only the 3rd time since the confrontation began. Just leave. You don't want this. Her voice carried something that made Connor Bradley take an involuntary step backward. It wasn't fear. Fear would have been normal, expected even. It was more like pity, like she was trying to protect them from something they didn't understand. Are you threatening us? Ryan laughed incredulously. 5 Marines against 1 fake soldier bartender? Ashley's phone buzzed again. This time, the sender's name was briefly visible. JSOC Priority, Joint Special Operations Command. Anderson nearly dropped his own phone. JSOC didn't send messages to bartenders. They sent messages to people who operated in the shadows, who did things that never made the news, who officially didn't exist. The standoff had reached a critical point. Blake's aggression was escalating, the other Marines were getting restless, and Ashley had run out of ways to defuse the situation without revealing more than she wanted to. The careful life she'd built over the past 2 years, the quiet anonymity she'd sought after too many years of violence and chaos, was about to come crashing down. Last warning, Blake said, his free hand moving to the knife on his belt, not drawing it, just resting his hand there in clear threat. Admit you're a fraud. Apologize to every real warrior in this room, and maybe we let you walk out of here with just hurt feelings." Ashley's response was to look him directly in the eye for the first time. What Blake saw there made him pause despite his drunken bravado. Those weren't the eyes of a bartender. They weren't even the eyes of a regular soldier. They were the eyes of someone who had seen and done things that would give normal people nightmares for the rest of their lives. Eyes that had watched teammates die, that had made impossible decisions in fractions of seconds, that had looked through a scope and changed history with the pull of a trigger. "Stand down, Marine," Ashley said, and her voice carried the unmistakable tone of command, not the artificial authority of rank, but the natural leadership of someone who had led warriors in the most extreme circumstances imaginable. The phrase "stand down" was deliberate, specific. It was military terminology that civilians rarely used correctly, delivered with the exact intonation that superior officers used when giving orders. Mason caught it immediately, his technical mind processing the implications. "Who are you?" Mason asked, genuine curiosity replacing his earlier mockery. Before Ashley could answer, Ryan decided he had had enough talking. The Lance Corporal lunged forward, intending to grab Ashley's arm and force her to her knees, a dominance display that would have worked on most people his size or smaller. Ashley moved with economy of motion that spoke of years of training. She didn't dodge dramatically or counterattack aggressively. She simply wasn't where Ryan expected her to be, having shifted exactly 6 inches to the left, just enough for him to overextend and stumble into the bar. Her hand guided his momentum, not forcefully, just a gentle redirection that sent him crashing into a row of bar stools. "What the hell?" Ryan sputtered, scrambling back to his feet. The movement had been so subtle, so precise, that most of the Marines weren't even sure what had happened. But Anderson had seen it clearly. That was a technique taught in advanced hand-to-hand combat courses, the kind that emphasized using an opponent's force against them. More specifically, it was a technique he'd seen used by special operations forces, who needed to subdue enemies quietly, without attracting attention. Blake's face reddened with rage. His grip on Ashley's shirt tightened, and he pulled hard, intending to drag her across the bar. The fabric tore with a sharp ripping sound, the front of her shirt pulling away to reveal what lay beneath. The room went absolutely silent. The full tattoo was now visible on Ashley's upper chest and arm. Not just the seal trident that had started this confrontation, but the complete design that told a story none of them had expected. The trident was intricately detailed, clearly professional work, not some strip mall tattoo parlor job. Around it, in small, precise lettering, were numbers and codes that made Anderson's blood run cold. DevGru, Ghost 7, 2370, Operation Neptune Spear, Operation Red Wings, Fallujah 2004-2009, Ramadi 2006, Kandahar 2011. But it was the final element that stopped everyone cold. KIA Tango 237, YA 3, killed in action. Tango, military slang for enemies eliminated. 237 confirmed kills. Wounded in action 3 times. This is getting intense, isn't it? Share this story with someone who needs to remember that the quietest person in the room might be the most dangerous. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Chief Anderson stood up so fast his chair toppled backward. Holy mother of... He couldn't finish the sentence. He was looking at something he'd only heard about in whispers among the special operations community. Ghost 7 wasn't just a call sign, it was a legend. Murphy moved faster than anyone had seen the 70-year-old move in years. He grabbed a framed photograph from behind the bar, one that had hung there for over a decade. It showed a group of Navy SEALs in Afghanistan, faces obscured for security reasons except for one, a younger Murphy in civilian contractor gear, standing next to a small female operator whose face was pixelated out. "Fallujah, 2009, Murphy said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "My convoy got hit by an IED. 12 contractors trapped in a kill zone, surrounded by at least 50 insurgents. One SEAL sniper held them off for 3 hours until extraction arrived. One sniper, 68 confirmed kills in a single engagement." He looked at Ashley with tears in his eyes. "I never knew your name. They just called you Ghost." The silence in the bar was deafening. Blake still had his hand on Ashley's torn shirt, but his grip had gone slack. The color had drained from his face as the implications of what he was seeing sank in. Mason pulled out his phone with shaking hands, accessing the same military database Anderson had used. He typed in the designation numbers from Ashley's tattoo. Most of the results came back classified, redacted, or simply reading "no such record," which in military database speak meant so classified we won't even confirm it exists. But one entry was partially visible. Mitchell, A. Petty Officer First Class, SEAL Team 7, Operational 2003-2015, status redacted. 2003, Amber said weakly. Women weren't even allowed in SEAL training then. It's impossible. Anderson spoke up from across the room, his voice carrying the authority of 3 decades of naval service. Black operations don't follow conventional regulations. They recruit talent wherever they find it, and sometimes that talent comes in packages you don't expect. Ashley hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, hadn't even pulled away from Blake's loosened grip. She stood there, exposed tattoo telling a story of service that exceeded anything the 5 Marines surrounding her had experienced or could even imagine. The torn shirt hung open, revealing not just the tattoo, but also something else. Scars. Multiple scars. A puckered bullet wound near her collarbone, the distinctive starburst pattern of shrapnel wounds across her ribs, the clean line of a knife wound along her shoulder. Blake's hand fell away completely. He took a stumbling step backward, his alcohol-fogged brain trying to process what he was seeing. You're actually retired, Ashley said simply. I'm just a bartender now. But even as she said it, everyone in the room could see the lie in those words. You could retire from the military, but you couldn't retire from being what Ashley Mitchell had been. It was written in every controlled movement, every tactical assessment, every carefully measured response to threat. She had been, still was, one of the most lethal human beings on the planet. Connor Bradley, the youngest Marine, was the first to fully grasp the magnitude of their mistake. His face went white as he remembered every action movie he'd ever seen, every military documentary, every whispered story about special operations forces. They had just spent 20 minutes threatening someone who had more combat kills than their entire unit combined. "Oh no," Connor whispered. "Oh no, oh no, oh no." The security camera system Murphy had installed, a professional-grade setup with night vision capabilities and automatic cloud storage that many veteran-owned businesses used for protection, had captured everything. The high-definition cameras with their infrared sensors and motion-activated recording had documented every moment of the confrontation, from the Marines' initial threats to the revelation of Ashley's identity. The footage was already being backed up to secure servers, the kind that insurance companies and law enforcement agencies relied on for evidence. Murphy had learned long ago that in a bar frequented by military personnel, good security footage could be the difference between a he-said-she-said situation and clear proof of what actually happened. Product placement note, professional security camera system with cloud storage. That's... Mason started, his technical mind finally putting all the pieces together. Ghost 7. You're Ghost 7, the sniper from Operation Crimson Dawn. At the mention of Crimson Dawn, Ashley's expression finally changed. For just a moment, something flickered across her face. Not pride, not nostalgia, but pain. Deep, profound pain that spoke of losses that could never be adequately expressed in words. "We don't talk about Crimson Dawn," she said quietly, but Mason, his curiosity overriding his sense of self-preservation, pressed on. 42 SEALs trapped behind enemy lines, surrounded by Taliban forces. No air support because of weather. Command wrote them off as lost. But one sniper held a ridgeline for 18 hours, picking off anyone who tried to advance on their position. 412 rounds fired, 211 confirmed kills. One sniper. They said it was impossible, that the story had to be exaggerated, but here she is, Anderson finished, his voice filled with awe. The impossible woman. Ashley pulled the remnants of her torn shirt closed, though the damage was already done. Her carefully maintained anonymity, the quiet life she'd built in this small California town, was over. The Marines who had threatened her moments ago now looked like children who had just realized they'd been poking a sleeping tiger with a stick. Blake Harrison, Sergeant Blake Harrison, who had led this confrontation with such aggressive confidence, looked like he might be sick. The magnitude of what he'd done, threatening a decorated special operations veteran, grabbing her, tearing her clothes, was sinking in with devastating clarity. This wasn't just a mistake. This was the kind of mistake that ended careers, that got you court-martialed, that followed you for the rest of your life. Blake Blake started, then stopped. What could he possibly say? What apology could even begin to cover what they'd done? Amber Williams was crying silently, tears streaming down her face as she stared at Ashley. As a female Marine, she'd faced her own battles for respect and recognition. She had fought against the stereotype that women couldn't be warriors, couldn't handle combat, couldn't earn their place among the brotherhood. And here was a woman who had not only earned that place but had exceeded it in ways that defied comprehension. And Amber had called her pathetic, had accused her of stolen valor. "Why?" Amber asked through her tears. "Why are you working in a bar? Why are you hiding?" Ashley looked at her with those ancient eyes and that young face. "Because I've had enough of being a weapon. Because I wanted to see if I could be something else. Someone else." The front door of Murphy's Tavern burst open with enough force to make everyone jump. Everyone except Ashley, who had simply shifted her weight slightly to face the new potential threat. Two figures entered, one in civilian clothes, but carrying herself with unmistakable military bearing. The other in full navy dress blues with enough ribbons and insignia to make it clear this was someone of significant rank. Commander Grace Thompson, dressed in jeans and a simple sweater, but still radiating authority, surveyed the scene with sharp eyes that missed nothing. The 5 Marines in various states of shock and fear, Ashley with her torn shirt and exposed scars, Murphy and Anderson standing like guards, ready to intervene if necessary. Behind Commander Thompson, a man whose uniform bore the insignia of a Navy captain stepped into the bar. Captain James Mitchell, no relation to Ashley despite the shared surname, had the kind of presence that made even drunk Marines snap to attention. His chest bore the SEAL trident, multiple combat ribbons, and the kind of decorations that spoke of a career spent in the most dangerous places on Earth. But it was what happened next that would be burned into the memory of everyone present. Both Commander Thompson and Captain Mitchell looked at Ashley, took in her torn clothing and the obvious confrontation that had occurred, and then, in perfect synchronization, they saluted her. Not the casual greeting between officers, but a full, formal salute, the kind rendered to heroes, to legends, to those who had gone above and beyond the call of duty. Ashley stood a little straighter, her hand coming up automatically to return the salute despite her civilian clothes and torn shirt. For a moment, the bartender facade fell away completely, and everyone in the room could see what she really was, a warrior, a leader, someone who had commanded respect in the most elite military unit in the world. "Petty Officer Mitchell," Commander Thompson said formally, though her eyes blazed with fury as she took in the scene, "we received your emergency beacon." Emergency beacon. Ashley's phone, the encrypted message she'd deleted. She hadn't just been receiving messages, she had activated a distress signal, probably the moment Blake had grabbed her, and the response had been immediate, overwhelming, and decisive. "I'm retired, Commander," Ashley said quietly. "No one retires from what you are," Captain Mitchell said, his voice carrying the weight of personal experience. "They just take extended leave." Blake and his fellow Marines were now standing at rigid attention, their training overriding their shock. You didn't slouch when officers of this caliber were present, especially when those officers were clearly here to protect someone you'd just spent 20 minutes threatening. Commander Thompson's gaze swept over the 5 Marines, and her expression could have frozen helium. Would someone care to explain why 5 United States Marines are threatening a decorated Navy SEAL veteran in a civilian establishment? The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Ryan started to stammer something about not knowing, about the tattoo looking fake, but Thompson cut him off with a gesture. "Corporal Williams," she said, addressing Amber directly, "you're a female Marine. You know how hard women have to fight for respect in the military. And you stood here and accused one of the first women to ever complete SEAL training of stolen valor?" Amber couldn't speak through her tears. She just shook her head, unable to find words for the magnitude of her shame. Captain Mitchell pulled out a tablet, swiping through classified files with practiced ease. "Ashley Mitchell," he read aloud. "Graduated Buds Class 234, the first woman to ever complete the training, though that fact was classified for operational security. 8 deployments, 11 Bronze Stars, 6 Silver Stars, 3 Purple Hearts, and a Medal of Honor that was classified and never publicly awarded because the operation it was earned on officially never happened. Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration. The kind of valor that most soldiers could only dream of displaying, and it had been earned by the small woman they'd cornered and threatened. Can you feel the tension building? If you know what's coming next is going to be epic, smash that like button. Subscribe for more stories of underestimated warriors. Chief Anderson had pulled out his tablet as well, accessing his Veterans Legal Assistance app, one of those comprehensive services that helped retired service members navigate benefits claims, legal issues, and verification of service records. The platform connected directly to official military databases and could provide instant authentication of service claims, invaluable for the veteran community in distinguishing real heroes from those committing stolen valor. Within seconds, he had pulled up what little of Ashley's record wasn't classified. Product placement note, Veterans Legal Assistance and Records Verification Service. Confirmed, Anderson announced to the room. Everything checks out. This is legitimate. She's the real deal. But even without the electronic verification, the truth was written all over Ashley's body and bearing. The scars, the tattoo, the muscle memory, the tactical awareness. You couldn't fake these things. You couldn't fake the kind of hypervigilance that had her tracking every person in the room while appearing relaxed. You couldn't fake the kind of physical conditioning that had allowed her to redirect Ryan's attack without apparent effort. You couldn't fake the eyes of someone who had seen humanity at its absolute worst and somehow survived with their sanity intact. Blake found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. We didn't know. The tattoo. You thought a small woman couldn't possibly be a SEAL, Ashley said, not unkindly, but with a directness that cut through all pretense. You saw what you expected to see, not what was actually there. Murphy had moved behind the bar, pulling out a bottle of his best whiskey, the one he saved for special occasions and special people. He poured a shot and slid it toward Ashley, who looked at it but didn't touch it. I don't drink anymore, she said simply. Not since Crimson Dawn. The mention of that operation again sent a ripple through the room. Even the Marines, who weren't cleared to know the details, had heard whispers about Crimson Dawn. Something had gone wrong, something that had resulted in casualties, in questions, in the kind of classified investigation that ended careers, and somehow, Ashley Mitchell had been at the center of it. Commander Thompson turned to address the Marines directly. What happened here tonight will be reported through proper channels. Threatening a veteran, especially one with Petty Officer Mitchell's service record, carries severe consequences. However, she paused, looking at Ashley, the final decision on whether to press charges rests with her. All eyes turned to Ashley. She had every right to destroy their careers, to press charges that would result in court-martials, in dishonorable discharges, in the end of everything they'd worked for. Blake's sergeant stripes would be gone. Mason's technical expertise would mean nothing with a DD-214 that read, dishonorable. Ryan, Connor, and Amber would carry this mark for the rest of their lives. Part 2. Ashley stood there for a long moment, looking at each of the 5 Marines in turn. The power dynamic in the room had completely reversed. Where minutes ago she had been surrounded and threatened, now she held their futures in her hands. The silence stretched taut, broken only by the hum of the overhead fluorescent lights and the distant sound of a motorcycle passing on the street outside. You want to know what I learned in 12 years of special operations? Ashley finally said, her voice carrying that particular quiet intensity that made everyone lean in to listen. I learned that the most dangerous enemy isn't the one pointing a gun at you, it's the one you create through your own assumptions, your own prejudice, your own inability to see past the surface. She moved then, not toward the Marines but toward the wall of photographs Murphy kept. Hundreds of service members from every branch, every conflict from World War II to the present. Her fingers traced across one particular photo, so faded and water-damaged that the faces were barely visible. Mogadishu, 1993, she said. My father was there, Army Ranger. Came home in a box when I was 3 years old. My mother raised me on stories of his service, his sacrifice. I grew up knowing I would serve, knowing I would follow in his footsteps. What I didn't know was how hard the military would make it for someone who looked like me. Blake shifted uncomfortably, his shame deepening with every word. The story was hitting too close to home. Every military member knew someone who had made the ultimate sacrifice, left behind families who carried that burden forever. I tried to enlist at 17, Ashley continued. Recruiters took one look at me, 5'4", 115 pounds, and tried to steer me toward administrative roles, support positions, safe positions. They said combat arms wasn't for someone built like me, so I proved them wrong. I spent a year training, building muscle, studying every manual I could get my hands on. When I came back at 18, I didn't ask for combat arms. I asked for the SEALs. Mason let out an involuntary sound of disbelief. Nobody just asks for the SEALs. You have to be invited, recommended, selected. Unless you score perfect on every assessment they throw at you, Ashley replied. Unless you demonstrate capabilities they can't ignore. Unless you make yourself undeniable. She turned from the wall, facing them again. But even then, I wasn't supposed to make it. Women weren't allowed in SEAL training, officially. But there was a black program, something off the books. They wanted to see if a woman could do it, but they wanted plausible deniability if it failed. I was their guinea pig, Commander Thompson spoke up, her voice carrying historical weight. Project Valkyrie, it's still classified, but since you've already seen evidence of it, she gestured to Ashley's exposed tattoos. One woman, trained alongside regular SEAL candidates, but kept separate for administrative purposes. If she failed, the program never existed. If she succeeded, she became a ghost, Ashley finished. Operating in shadows, deployed to situations where a female operator could provide advantages that male SEALs couldn't. Infiltration of compounds where women were kept separate. Intelligence gathering in cultures where men couldn't interact with half the population. Precision elimination of targets who would never suspect a small woman of being a threat. Amber was staring at Ashley with something approaching worship. You did it. You actually did it. You broke the barrier before they even admitted the barrier existed. I survived it, Ashley corrected. Hell Week nearly killed me. Literally. My body went into organ failure on day 5. The instructors wanted to pull me out, but I refused medical attention. Signed a waiver that if I died, it was on me. Spent the last 48 hours hallucinating from dehydration and exhaustion. But I made it. First woman to ever complete Hell Week, though the records show I was never there. Captain Mitchell pulled up something on his tablet, a grainy photograph from what looked like surveillance footage. It showed a group of SEAL candidates on the beach, faces obscured by mud and exhaustion, but one figure was noticeably smaller than the others. Coronado, California, August 2003. Class 234, Day 6 of Hell Week. That's you, isn't it? Ashley glanced at the photo. That was the day Instructor Harrison, no relation to you, Sergeant, said I'd never make it. That women were fundamentally incapable of the mental toughness required to be a SEAL. I spent the next 18 hours proving him wrong. He became one of my strongest supporters after that. Wrote my recommendation for Team 7. Team 7, Ryan whispered. That's the Tier 1 unit. The ones who don't exist, Ashley cut him off. The ones who handle operations that can never be acknowledged. The ones who do the things that let everyone else sleep peacefully at night. Murphy had been quietly making phone calls while this conversation unfolded. Now he put his hand over the receiver and said, Base security is asking if they need to send MPs. Someone reported a disturbance. Ashley shook her head. No MPs necessary. This is being handled. But the question remained, handled how? The 5 Marines were still standing at attention, waiting for Ashley's decision on their fate. Would she press charges? Would she report them to their command? Would she end their careers as swiftly and decisively as she had apparently ended the lives of 237 enemy combatants? Sit down, Ashley said suddenly. All of you, sit down and listen. The Marines looked at each other uncertainly, then slowly took seats at the nearest table. Ashley pulled up a chair across from them, moving with that economy of motion that spoke of years of tactical training. Commander Thompson and Captain Mitchell remained standing, flanking her like an honor guard. You want to know about the tattoo, Ashley said, rolling up what remained of her torn sleeve to fully expose the intricate artwork. Every mark on here represents a mission, an operation, a life saved or taken. This one, she pointed to a small date near her wrist, October 12th, 2004. First confirmed kill. Ramadi, enemy sniper who had been picking off Marines from a hospital roof, 800 meters shot through a sandstorm. My spotter said it was impossible. I made it anyway. Blake's face had gone pale. He knew that date. Every Marine who had served in Ramadi knew that date. It was the day the sniper known as the Ghost had started hunting enemy fighters, the day the tide had started to turn in that particular battle. This one, Ashley continued, pointing to another mark, February 3rd, 2007, classified operation in Pakistan. Can't tell you details, but I can tell you that 43 American intelligence assets made it home because of what my team did that night. This one, August 15th, 2009, the convoy Murphy mentioned, 68 kills in 3 hours, holding a position that command said was indefensible. Each date, each mark, told a story of service that went beyond what most military members could even imagine. But it was the largest mark, the one over her heart, that drew everyone's attention. September 14th, 2013, Ashley said quietly, Operation Crimson Dawn. The day everything changed. The room seemed to hold its breath. Even Commander Thompson and Captain Mitchell looked uncomfortable. Crimson Dawn was still an active investigation, still classified at levels that most people didn't even know existed. 42 SEALs from Team 6 and Team 7, Ashley began, her voice taking on a distant quality. Joint operation to extract a high-value intelligence asset from Taliban custody. Everything that could go wrong did. Bad intel put us in the wrong valley. Comms failed, weather turned. By the time we realized we were walking into a trap, we were surrounded. 300 enemy fighters with high ground and heavy weapons. Connor Bradley was doing math in his head. 300 against 42? That's suicide odds. It would have been, except Command had attached a sniper team as Overwatch. Me and my spotter, Petty Officer Marcus Webb. We held the high ground on the eastern ridge, supposed to provide cover for the extraction. When everything went sideways, we became the only thing standing between those SEALs and complete annihilation. Ashley's hand unconsciously moved to one of the scars on her ribs. Marcus took a round in the first hour. Chest wound, sucking chest wound. I had to choose. Provide medical aid and let the SEALs below get overrun, or keep shooting and let my partner die slowly beside me. The moral weight of that decision hung in the air. Everyone in the room understood the impossible choice she had faced. Save one life or save 42. I kept shooting, Ashley said simply, for 18 hours. Marcus died in hour 3, still spotting targets for me until he couldn't speak anymore. I fired 412 rounds, 211 confirmed kills. My shoulder dislocated from the rifle recoil after hour 8. I had to brace the weapon differently. Taught myself to shoot left-handed in the middle of a firefight. By the time air support finally arrived, I had 2 rounds left. Mason was typing frantically on his phone, pulling up what unclassified information existed about Crimson Dawn. His face went white as he read. The investigation. They court-martialed someone for Crimson Dawn. Said the sniper team abandoned their position, failed to provide adequate cover. Ashley's expression darkened. Politics. The operation was unauthorized at the highest levels. Someone had to take the fall when it went public that we'd violated Pakistani airspace without permission. They couldn't court-martial 42 SEALs, so they court-martialed the sniper who survived, me. But you saved them all, Amber protested. Every report I've seen credits the sniper with preventing a complete massacre. Doesn't matter when the State Department needs someone to blame, Ashley replied. The charges were eventually dropped, sealed, classified beyond anyone's ability to access them. But the damage was done. I was radioactive. No unit would take me. The SEALs who knew what really happened tried to protest, but Command made it clear. Support me and end your career. So I made it easy for everyone. I disappeared. Disappeared where? Blake asked, finding his voice for the first time in several minutes. Here and there, private military contractor for a while, security consultation, freelance work that I can't discuss. Finally ended up here 2 years ago. Murphy knew who I was. We'd stayed in touch after Fallujah. He offered me a job, a place to just exist, to try being normal for once. Commander Thompson cleared her throat. What Petty Officer Mitchell isn't telling you is that she's turned down 17 offers to return to active duty in those 2 years. Everyone from JSOC to the CIA has tried to recruit her. She's said no to all of them. Why? Connor asked, genuinely puzzled. Why would you walk away from being what you are? Ashley looked at him with those ancient eyes. Because I've killed 237 people. 237. Do you know what that does to a person? Every face, every name when I could learn it, every family that lost someone because I pulled a trigger. They were enemy combatants, legitimate military targets, but they were also human beings. Sons, fathers, brothers. I've taken more lives than most people will ever meet. At what point does a warrior become just a killer? The philosophical weight of the question silenced everyone. It was something most military members tried not to think about too deeply, the human cost of what they were trained to do. "You're not a killer," Murphy said firmly from behind the bar. "You're a protector. Every life you took saved American lives. My life. The lives of those SEALs. You carry that burden so others don't have to." Ashley's phone buzzed again. This time, she didn't immediately delete the message. The screen showed another JSOC priority alert, but she set it aside without reading it. "So," she said, turning back to the 5 Marines, "you wanted to know if I earned this tattoo. You wanted to know if I deserved to wear the trident. You have your answer. The question now is what we do about what happened here tonight." Blake slowly reached up and began removing his sergeant chevrons from his collar. "I'll report myself to command in the morning. Conduct unbecoming, assault, threatening a veteran. I'll take whatever punishment—" "Stop," Ashley said quietly. Blake's hands froze on his insignia. "I'm not pressing charges. I'm not reporting this to your command. I'm not ending your careers." "But we—" Mason started. "You made a mistake based on bad assumptions," Ashley cut him off. "You let alcohol and ego override your judgment. You failed to see what was right in front of you because it didn't match your expectations. These are failures of perception, not character. Learn from them." She stood up, and despite her small stature and torn clothing, she seemed to fill the room. "But understand this, you've had a glimpse tonight of what special operations really means. It's not glory, it's not excitement. It's not what Hollywood shows you. It's carrying weight that never gets lighter. It's making impossible decisions with incomplete information. It's sacrificing everything, including your own identity, for people who will never know your name. If this story gave you chills, wait until you see what we have next. Subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss our military stories that remind us why we should never judge by appearances." Ashley reached into her pocket and pulled out something small and metallic, a challenge coin. Navy SEAL's challenge coin, worn smooth from years of handling. She set it on the table in front of Blake. "This was given to me by Admiral William McRaven himself," she said. "After a mission I can't discuss, in a place I was never at, doing things that never happened. He told me that the truest form of service is the service no one ever knows about, the sacrifices that can't be acknowledged, the heroism that has to remain hidden." Blake stared at the coin like it was a holy relic. In the special operations community, challenge coins were more than souvenirs. They were tangible representations of respect, acknowledgement, bonds forged in the most extreme circumstances. "I can't take this," Blake said. "I don't deserve—" "No, you don't," Ashley agreed. "Not yet. But someday you might. Someday you might be in a position where you have to choose between what's easy and what's right, between your ego and someone else's welfare, between assumptions and truth. When that day comes, remember tonight. Remember that the most dangerous warrior you ever met was a 5'4" bartender who chose to serve drinks instead of serving death." She turned to Amber. "You asked why I hide. I don't hide. I choose. I choose to be something other than a weapon. I choose to live a life where my worth isn't measured in confirmed kills. I choose to see if Ashley Mitchell can exist beyond Ghost 7. Commander Thompson stepped forward. "Speaking of which, we should discuss the reason we're actually here tonight." Ashley's expression suggested she'd been expecting this. "The message." "What message?" Captain Mitchell asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. Thompson pulled out her own phone, showing a classified communication. 3 hours ago, SEAL Team 6 encountered unexpected resistance during an operation in Syria. They're pinned down, taking casualties, and specifically requested support from, and I quote, "the only sniper who could make the shots necessary to get us out." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Everyone understood what was being asked. Ashley was being called back to the life she'd walked away from, asked to become Ghost 7 one more time. "They have other snipers," Ashley said. "Younger ones, ones who haven't been out of the game for 2 years. None with your record, none with your specific skill set, none who've proven they can do the impossible when everything goes wrong," Thompson countered. "This is voluntary, Ashley, completely voluntary. But 48 American operators are trapped, and they asked for you by name." Ashley picked up her phone, finally reading the message she'd been ignoring. Her face revealed nothing, but her shoulders tensed slightly, the only sign of the internal war being waged. Murphy spoke up from behind the bar. "Whatever you decide, this is your home when you come back. This job, this life, it'll be waiting." "If I come back, Ashley said quietly. When? Murphy corrected firmly. When you come back. Ashley looked around the room, at Murphy, who had given her sanctuary, at Anderson, who had recognized her for what she truly was, at Thompson and Mitchell, who represented the life she'd left behind, and finally at the 5 Marines who had learned a profound lesson about assumptions and respect. The weight of the decision was visible on her face. 2 years of carefully constructed normalcy, of trying to be just another person in a small California town, stood against the call of duty that had defined her entire adult life. She had walked away from being Ghost 7 because the weight of all those lives taken had become unbearable. But now, American lives hung in the balance, and they had asked for her specifically. Tell me about the situation, Ashley said finally, her voice carrying the resignation of someone who already knew what their answer would be. Commander Thompson pulled up a tactical display on her tablet. Team 6 was conducting a high-value target extraction in eastern Syria. Intelligence suggested minimal resistance, local militia, maybe 30 fighters. Instead, they encountered what appears to be a reinforced company of Russian mercenaries, possibly Wagner Group, professional soldiers with modern equipment and tactical training. Wagner Group, Ashley repeated, her expression darkening. I've encountered them before. They don't take prisoners. Which is why Team 6 needs immediate extraction. They're holed up in an abandoned school complex, surrounded on 3 sides. The 4th side is a cliff face, no escape that way. Enemy snipers have taken positions that make helicopter extraction impossible. They need someone to clear those positions, someone who can make shots that shouldn't be possible. Ashley studied the tactical display, her mind already calculating distances, angles, wind patterns. The part of her that was Ghost 7 was awakening, pushing aside Ashley Mitchell, the bartender, with frightening ease. That's a minimum distance of 1,500 meters for effective counter-sniper operations, she said. In Syrian terrain, with thermal inversions and crosswinds, most snipers max out at 1,200 meters under those conditions. Most snipers aren't you, Captain Mitchell said simply. Ashley looked at the 5 Marines who were watching this exchange with fascination and growing respect. You want to know what real service looks like? She asked them. It looks like leaving everything you've built, everything safe and normal, because someone needs you. It looks like walking back into hell because you're the only one who can. She turned to Commander Thompson. I need specific equipment. My rifle, the one I used in Afghanistan. It should still be in storage at Dam Neck. Schmidt and Bender scope, the one with the custom reticle I designed. Match-grade ammunition, temperature-stable powder, and I need a spotter. I thought you said you work alone now, Thompson reminded her. I do, but this isn't a one-person job. I need someone who can read wind, call corrections, and watch my 6 while I'm scoped in. Ashley looked at the assembled group. Someone I can trust. I'll do it, Blake said suddenly, surprising everyone including himself. I qualified expert marksman. I've been through the Scout Sniper basic course. I know I'm not special operations, but you're not going into combat in Syria based on one night's revelation. Ashley cut him off, though not unkindly. Besides, you've been drinking. Even if we sobered you up, your hands wouldn't be steady enough for 36 hours. Chief Anderson stood up from his corner booth. I'll go. Everyone turned to look at the 71-year-old retired chief petty officer. Chief, Ashley began gently, I appreciate the offer, but I was a spotter for SEAL Team 4 before you were born, young lady, Anderson interrupted, his voice carrying the authority of decades of service. Vietnam, Grenada, Panama, First Gulf War. My eyes aren't what they were, but I can still read wind and call shots. More importantly, I know how to shut up and let a sniper work. Ashley studied him for a long moment. This could be a one-way trip, Chief. We're talking about inserting into hostile territory, engaging multiple targets, and extracting under fire. I've had a good run, Anderson replied simply. 71 years, 30 of them, in service to this country. If my last act is helping you save 48 American operators, that's a death worth dying. Nobody's dying, Murphy said firmly from behind the bar. Not on my watch. He reached under the bar and pulled out a case that had been hidden there for years. Inside was a rifle, not as modern as Ashley's preferred weapon, but clearly maintained with loving care. M40A5, same one I used in Fallujah when I was doing contract work. If you need backup, I'm coming too. Murphy, You're 70 years old with a bad hip and hands that shake from Parkinson's, Ashley said gently. My hands don't shake when I'm behind a scope, Murphy replied with dignity. Never have, never will. The room had taken on an almost surreal quality. 3 generations of warriors, one young and trying to leave the life, one middle-aged and comfortable with what he had done, one old and ready for one last mission, were preparing to go to war together. This is insane, Mason said. You're talking about 3 people, 2 of them retirement age, taking on professional mercenaries in Syria. We're talking about warriors answering the call, Commander Thompson corrected. Age is just a number when experience and skill are what matter. Ashley made her decision. Chief Anderson is my spotter. Murphy stays here. Someone needs to maintain our extraction route and coordinate with local assets. She looked at the 5 Marines. And you 5 are going to help with logistics and planning. Consider it your penance. We're not qualified, Connor started. You're Marines, Ashley interrupted. Act like it. Blake, I need detailed terrain analysis of the area around that school complex. Mason, get me everything you can on Wagner Group tactics and equipment. Ryan, coordinate with base motor pool. We need vehicles that won't be traced back to official military operations. Connor, work with Amber on establishing a communications protocol that can't be intercepted. The Marines straightened, suddenly having purpose and direction. This was what they understood. Clear objectives, specific tasks, a mission to complete. Commander Thompson was already on her phone, making arrangements. Transport leaves in 3 hours. We'll stop at Dam Neck to pick up your equipment, then straight to the staging area. You'll have 6 hours to prep before insertion. 6 hours, Ashley repeated. That's cutting it close. Team 6 might not have that long. It's the best we can do while maintaining operational security, Thompson replied. Ashley turned to Murphy. I need you to do something for me. If I don't come back, you're coming back, Murphy said firmly. If I don't, Ashley continued, there's a storage unit on Vinewood Street, number 47. Everything in there needs to be destroyed. No questions, no looking through it, just burn it all. Murphy nodded slowly, understanding that she was asking him to destroy evidence of missions that never happened, protecting people, and operations that could still be compromised even years later. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of activity. The Marines worked with surprising efficiency. Once given clear direction, their training overcoming their shock at the evening's revelations. Blake produced detailed topographical maps of the Syrian terrain, identifying potential sniper positions and escape routes. Mason compiled a comprehensive dossier on Wagner Group, including their preferred tactics and known equipment. Ryan somehow procured 2 unmarked SUVs with plates that wouldn't trace back to the military. Connor and Amber established an encrypted communication system using a combination of civilian and military technologies. Ashley watched them work with something approaching approval. You see, she said to Commander Thompson, they're good Marines. They just needed proper direction. They also needed to be humbled, Thompson replied. What you did tonight, choosing education over punishment, that's real leadership. That's what Marcus Webb did for me, Ashley said quietly. My first spotter. I was cocky, thought being the first woman through Buds made me special. He taught me that being special operations isn't about being special. It's about being effective. He died teaching me that lesson. Chief Anderson had returned to his apartment to gather his own equipment. Despite his age, he moved with purpose and clarity, packing gear he hadn't touched in years but had maintained out of habit. His spotting scope, rangefinder, and the notebook where he'd recorded wind patterns and atmospheric conditions from hundreds of missions all went into a battered rucksack that had seen 5 continents and more combat than most units see in a lifetime. Back at Murphy's Tavern, Ashley stood in the bathroom, looking at herself in the mirror. The torn shirt revealed not just her tattoos and scars, but the body beneath, lean, scarred, functional. Every mark told a story of violence survived, of missions completed, of a life lived in service to others. She had tried to walk away from this, tried to be normal, but perhaps Murphy was right. Perhaps you never really left the battlefield. You just found new ones. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Come in. It was Amber Williams, holding a fresh shirt, one of Murphy's spares from the back room. Thought you might need this, ma'am. Just Ashley, she corrected, taking the shirt gratefully. Ashley, Amber repeated. Can I ask you something? Something personal? Ashley nodded as she changed shirts, not bothered by Amber's presence. Privacy was a luxury you gave up in the military. Do you regret it? The killing, I mean. All those lives taken. Ashley considered the question carefully. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that we live in a world where sometimes violence is the only answer. But do I regret pulling the trigger when American lives were on the line? No, never. How do you live with it? The weight of all those deaths. You don't live with it, Ashley replied. You carry it, every day, every night. You carry it so others don't have to. That's the deal we make when we become warriors. We take on the darkness so others can live in the light. Amber nodded slowly, absorbing this wisdom. I called you pathetic earlier. I'm so sorry. You're the opposite of pathetic. You're what I want to be, a warrior who doesn't need to advertise it, who finds strength in service rather than recognition. Then be better than me, Ashley said, surprising the younger woman. Learn from my mistakes. Don't let the job consume you. Don't let the count define you. Remember that you're a person first, a warrior second. I forgot that, and it cost me everything except my life. They returned to the main room where final preparations were being made. The Marines had completed their assigned tasks and were now standing awkwardly, unsure of their role now that the immediate work was done. Ashley addressed them directly. You five are going to stay here and maintain our logistics base. If things go wrong, you're our backup plan for extraction. Murphy will coordinate, but you're the muscle if needed. We should come with you, Blake protested. We're combat Marines. We can fight. You can, but you won't, Ashley said firmly. This is a precision operation, not a firefight. Too many people make noise, draw attention, get killed. Besides, she added with a slight smile, someone needs to watch Murphy's bar. Can't have it getting robbed while we're gone. The attempt at humor fell flat. Everyone knew this might be the last time they saw Ashley Mitchell alive. She was walking back into a life she'd tried to leave, becoming again the weapon she'd tried to stop being. Commander Thompson's phone buzzed. Transport's here. Ashley took one last look around Murphy's tavern, at the photos on the walls, the worn bar where she'd served hundreds of drinks, the place where she'd found something approaching peace. Then she squared her shoulders and walked toward the door, Ashley Mitchell transforming step by step back into Ghost 7. Chief Anderson was waiting by the vehicle, his rucksack loaded, his weathered face calm and ready. Despite his 71 years, there was something timeless about him, the eternal warrior, always ready for one more mission. You sure about this, Chief? Ashley asked. More sure than I've been about anything in 20 years, he replied. This is what we are, what we'll always be. Warriors don't retire. They just wait for the next call. As they climbed into the vehicle, the 5 Marines stood at attention and saluted. It was a gesture of respect, acknowledgement, and perhaps farewell. Ashley returned the salute crisply, then disappeared into the vehicle. The ride to the airfield was silent, each person lost in their own thoughts about what was to come. Ashley ran through equipment checks in her mind, visualizing the mission, preparing herself mentally for what she would have to do. Chief Anderson dozed lightly, conserving energy with the practiced ease of someone who had learned to sleep anywhere, anytime. Commander Thompson and Captain Mitchell coordinated via encrypted phones, ensuring everything would be ready when they arrived. At the airfield, the same C-130 that had brought Thompson and Mitchell to California waited on the tarmac. But this time, it would be carrying warriors to war, not officers to an administrative issue. As Ashley walked toward the aircraft, she felt the familiar sensation of transition, the world of normal people falling away, replaced by the hyper-real clarity of impending combat. Her senses sharpened, her breathing steadied, her mind cleared of everything except the mission. Ghost 7 is back, she murmured to herself, and for the first time in 2 years, the name felt right. The aircraft's cargo bay was already loaded with equipment cases, weapons, ammunition, and the 1,000 other things needed for a precision strike operation. Ashley immediately went to one particular case, opening it with hands that trembled slightly, not from fear, but from anticipation. Inside was her rifle, not just any rifle, but the one she'd carried through Afghanistan, Iraq, Pakistan, and a dozen other places that didn't officially exist. A custom-built .3 Lapua Magnum with a barrel she'd personally selected, a trigger adjusted to her exact preference, and a stock modified to fit her smaller frame perfectly. It was less a weapon and more an extension of her will, a tool through which she had reached out across impossible distances to touch the enemy with precision and finality. "Hello, old friend," she whispered, lifting the rifle from its case. It felt perfect in her hands, like coming home after a long journey. Chief Anderson was checking his own equipment with methodical precision. Despite his age, his hands were steady, his movements sure. This was muscle memory that transcended age, training so deeply ingrained that his body would remember it even if his mind forgot everything else. Wind meter's still accurate, he reported. Rangefinder needs new batteries, but I've got spares. Spotting scope is good to go. Commander Thompson approached with a tablet showing the latest intelligence. Situation update. Team 6 is still holding, but they're down to 30% ammunition. Enemy forces have been reinforced. We're now looking at approximately 150 fighters, including at least 12 confirmed snipers. 12 snipers, Ashley repeated. Wagner Group doesn't mess around. They know what they're doing, Thompson agreed. They've got overlapping fields of fire, mutual support positions, and they're using modern equipment. Thermal scopes, wind meters, the works. Ashley studied the tactical display, her mind already working through the problem. 12 enemy snipers meant 12 precision shots under combat conditions, probably while taking return fire. It meant shooting, moving, shooting again, all while keeping Chief Anderson alive and maintaining overwatch for Team 6's extraction. What's our insertion method? She asked. Halo jump, 3 miles from the target area. You'll have to hump it to your shooting position. Halo jump, Anderson said with a slight smile. Been 20 years since my last one. This should be interesting. Chief, you don't have to... Ashley started. Yes, I do, he interrupted. This is my choice, my mission. Let an old warrior have his last dance. The flight to the staging area took 4 hours. Ashley spent the time studying satellite imagery, memorizing every building, every terrain feature, every possible shooting position. She ran ballistic calculations for different ranges and angles, accounting for temperature, humidity, altitude, and the Coriolis effect that would affect bullet trajectory at extreme ranges. Anderson, meanwhile, reviewed weather patterns for the region, studying wind flows and thermal variations that could affect long-range shooting. His notebook filled with calculations and observations, the accumulated wisdom of decades of experience distilled into precise mathematical formulas. They landed at a classified airbase somewhere in Eastern Europe. Ashley didn't ask where, didn't need to know. What mattered was that they were now just a short flight from the operational area, close enough to insert quickly once final preparations were complete. The base was a hive of activity, with special operations personnel from multiple countries preparing for various missions. Ashley recognized the patches and insignia of Delta Force, British SAS, French GIGN, and others. This was the sharp end of the spear, where the world's elite warriors gathered to do the things that kept civilization safe from chaos. Several operators recognized her, or at least recognized Ghost 7. Nods were exchanged, respectful acknowledgments between professionals who understood the weight of what they did. One Delta Force Sergeant Major approached, offering a simple, "Heard you were back. Good hunting." Ashley and Anderson were led to a briefing room where the full operational plan was laid out. Satellite imagery showed the abandoned school complex where Team 6 was trapped, surrounded by enemy positions marked in red. The enemy snipers were positioned in a rough circle, each covering specific angles of approach and escape. Primary landing zone is here, the briefing officer indicated, pointing to a position 3 miles northwest of the target. Terrain provides concealment for movement to this ridge, he indicated another position, which gives you optimal sight lines to 8 of the 12 sniper positions. The other 4 will require you to relocate here, another position, which means crossing approximately 800 meters of open ground. 800 meters of open ground while 4 enemy snipers are still active, Ashley said. It wasn't a complaint, just an observation. That's the challenge, the briefing officer agreed. Team 6 will attempt to provide suppressing fire during your movement, but their ammunition situation is critical. Ashley studied the map, running scenarios in her mind. What if we don't relocate? What if we take all 12 from the primary position? The briefing officer shook his head. Impossible. The angles don't work. You'd be shooting through buildings, around corners. Physics doesn't allow it. Ashley smiled slightly, the first genuine smile anyone had seen from her all night. Physics is just math, and math can be creative if you know how to work it. She pulled the map closer, making notes and calculations. These 4 positions, the ones we supposedly can't hit from the primary location, they're protected by buildings, right? But buildings have windows, and windows create channels. If I can thread a shot through multiple windows, using deflection and trajectory decay, that's impossible, the briefing officer said flatly. No one can make those shots. No one except Ghost 7, Chief Anderson said quietly. I've seen her do things that shouldn't be possible. If she says she can make the shots, she can make them. The briefing concluded with timing and communications protocols. They would insert in 6 hours, just before dawn. Team 6 would be informed of their presence and would coordinate their breakout attempt with Ashley's elimination of the enemy snipers. One more thing, Commander Thompson said as the briefing concluded. This operation is completely black. If you're captured or killed, we never heard of you. You were never here. Just like old times, Ashley said without bitterness. Ghosts doing ghost things. The next hours were spent in final preparation. Ashley zeroed her rifle on the base's range, adjusting for the specific atmospheric conditions of the target area. Every shot was perfect, centered exactly where she intended. Chief Anderson spotted for her, their communication falling into easy rhythm despite never having worked together before. Wind, 2 Emperor from the west, Anderson called. Ashley adjusted slightly and fired. Perfect hit. Correction, wind gusting to 3 ms, Anderson added. Without looking up from her scope, Ashley adjusted and fired again. Another perfect hit. They worked through various scenarios, moving targets, multiple targets, targets at extreme range. Every shot was precise, deadly, perfect. Watching from the observation area, several special operations snipers shook their heads in amazement. She's not human, one muttered. She's Ghost 7, another replied, as if that explained everything. As the insertion time approached, Ashley suited up in full combat gear for the first time in 2 years. The weight was familiar, but heavier than she remembered. Or perhaps she had simply gotten used to the lightness of civilian life. Tactical vest with ceramic plates, ammunition pouches, sidearm, knife, emergency medical supplies, radio equipment, each item essential, each adding weight that would have to be carried across rough terrain. Chief Anderson was similarly equipped, though he had wisely chosen lighter armor in deference to his age. He would be vulnerable to enemy fire, but he needed mobility more than protection. His job was to spot targets and watch Ashley's back, not engage in firefights. You ready for this, Chief? Ashley asked, as they conducted final equipment checks. Born ready, he replied with a grin that took decades off his weathered face. This is what I was meant to do. One last mission that matters. They loaded into the aircraft that would take them to the operational area. It was a specially modified C-130, equipped for high-altitude operations and radar evasion. The crew was professional, experienced, the kind who had inserted special operations forces into hostile territory hundreds of times. 30 minutes to drop zone, the loadmaster announced. Ashley and Anderson began breathing pure oxygen, purging nitrogen from their bloodstreams to prevent decompression sickness during the halo jump. The familiar ritual brought back memories of other missions, other jumps into darkness where death waited below. 10 minutes to drop zone. They stood and moved to the rear of the aircraft where the ramp was beginning to lower. The night sky yawned black and infinite beyond, wind howling past at 200 umph. Somewhere below, 48 American warriors were fighting for their lives, waiting for salvation that would come in the form of precision shots from impossible distances. 5 minutes to drop zone. Ashley checked Anderson's equipment one final time, ensuring his parachute was properly configured, his oxygen working correctly. Despite his bravado, this would be physically challenging for a 71-year-old man, but his eyes were clear, determined, ready. 2 minutes to drop zone. They moved to the edge of the ramp, looking out into the darkness. Below, Syria waited, a country torn by war, where international forces played deadly games with each other, while civilians suffered. Tonight, a small part of that larger conflict would be decided by 2 people, one young and one old, both warriors beyond their time. 1 minute to drop zone. Ashley turned to Anderson. If something happens to me, if I'm hit, you continue the mission. Those SEALs come home. Nothing's happening to you, Anderson replied firmly. I'll keep you safe. That's what spotters do. 30 seconds. They positioned themselves at the ramp's edge, ready to leap into the void. Ashley felt the familiar pre-combat calm descending, her heart rate actually slowing as the moment of action approached. This was where she belonged, on the edge between life and death, where skill and will determined who went home and who didn't. 10 seconds. Ashley looked at Anderson one more time. The old chief petty officer was smiling, actually smiling, as if he was about to jump into a swimming pool rather than a war zone. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go! They leaped together, plummeting into the Syrian night. The wind tore at them, trying to spin them out of control, but both maintained perfect body position, stable and controlled. They fell for 2 minutes, reaching terminal velocity, the ground rushing up at them at over 120 mph. At exactly the calculated altitude, their parachutes deployed automatically, the violent jerk of deceleration threatening to knock them unconscious. But both were ready for it, had trained for it, had done it before. They guided their parachutes toward the designated landing zone, using GPS displays on their wrists to navigate in the complete darkness. They landed within 50 meters of each other in a dried riverbed that provided concealment from any watching eyes. Immediately, they buried their parachutes and began moving toward their primary shooting position, 3 miles of rough terrain that had to be covered before dawn. Ashley led the way, her rifle ready, every sense alert for enemy presence. Anderson followed, matching her pace despite his age, his breathing controlled and quiet. They moved like ghosts through the darkness, using available cover, avoiding skylining themselves against the star-filled sky. 90 minutes later, they reached the ridge that would be their primary shooting position. Ashley immediately began setting up, using a small entrenching tool to create a shallow depression that would conceal her body while allowing clear sight lines to the target area. Anderson set up beside her, pulling out his spotting scope and rangefinder, beginning to map the enemy positions and calculate distances. Primary target, enemy sniper position Alpha, range 1,743 meters, he whispered. Wind 3 mph from the northwest, gusting to 5. Ashley dialed in the adjustments on her scope, factoring in not just wind but temperature, humidity, the spin drift of the bullet over that distance, even the rotation of the Earth that would affect the bullet's trajectory during its 3-second flight time. Dawn was beginning to break, painting the eastern sky in shades of purple and orange. Below, in the abandoned school complex, Team 6 was preparing for what might be their last stand. They had been informed that help was coming, that Ghost 7 herself was on Overwatch, but 48 hours of continuous combat had worn them down to almost nothing. The enemy was preparing too. Wagner Group mercenaries moving into final assault positions, ready to overrun the exhausted Americans once full daylight arrived. The enemy snipers were setting up for the killing shots that would eliminate any SEAL who tried to escape. Ashley centered her crosshairs on the first target, an enemy sniper barely visible in a church tower 1,743 meters away. At that distance, he was little more than a dark shape against a lighter background, but it was enough. "Send it," Anderson whispered. Ashley exhaled slowly, letting her heartbeat settle into the natural pause between beats, that moment of perfect stillness when the body was most stable. Her finger squeezed the trigger with constant, even pressure. The rifle fired with a sound like thunder, the recoil driving back into her shoulder with familiar force. The bullet flew for 3 full seconds, fighting gravity and wind, following the precise ballistic arc Ashley had calculated. The enemy sniper in the church tower jerked and fell, dead, before he even heard the shot that killed him. "Hit," Anderson confirmed. "Target 2, bearing 037, range 2,112 meters, wind holding steady." Ashley was already moving, adjusting her position and rifle for the next shot. She had minutes, maybe less, before the enemy realized they were under attack from a new threat. She had to eliminate as many as possible before they could react, relocate, or return fire. The second shot was even longer, pushing the limits of what the rifle could achieve. But Ashley had made longer shots in Afghanistan, had pushed physics to its breaking point and beyond. The bullet flew for nearly 4 seconds, dropping over 15 feet from its initial trajectory before finding its target. "Hit," Anderson confirmed again. "Target 3. And so it went, shot after shot, each one precise, deadly, perfect. Ashley had become Ghost 7 again, the impossible sniper, the one who made shots that shouldn't exist. Enemy snipers died without ever knowing what killed them, eliminated by a ghost they couldn't see or stop. But after the 6th kill, the enemy realized what was happening. Return fire began impacting around Ashley and Anderson's position, enemy snipers trying to locate them through muzzle flash and sound. Rock chips flew as bullets struck nearby, and Anderson grunted as a fragment cut his cheek. "You hit?" Ashley asked without looking away from her scope. "Just a scratch," Anderson replied, wiping away blood. "Target 7, range 1,900 meters, but he's behind partial cover. You'll need to thread the needle on this one." Ashley studied the target through her scope. The enemy sniper had positioned himself behind a concrete barrier, with only a few inches of his shoulder and scope visible. It was an almost impossible shot, requiring perfect precision across nearly 2 kilometers. Ashley made the shot. Hit. Target 8. By the 10th kill, the enemy snipers were in full retreat, abandoning their positions rather than face the ghost that was hunting them. But Ashley still had 2 more to eliminate, the ones in the positions that supposedly couldn't be hit from her location. "This is where it gets interesting," she muttered, beginning the complex calculations for threading shots through multiple windows across distances that would make most snipers laugh at the impossibility. "Target 11 is in that building, 3rd floor, but to hit him, you'd need to—" Anderson stopped, finally understanding what Ashley intended. "That's 4 windows you need to shoot through, with the bullet path curving from wind and gravity. It's impossible." "Impossible is just another word for difficult," Ashley replied. "Call the wind." Anderson checked his instruments. "Wind 4 MP from the northwest at our position, but it'll be different between those buildings. Best guess, 2 MP from to the west in that corridor." Ashley factored in everything: wind at multiple points, the deflection caused by glass windows, the trajectory decay over distance, even the temperature differentials between sunlit and shaded areas. It was mathematics at its most complex, ballistics pushed to theoretical limits. She fired. The bullet flew across 2,300 meters, punched through the first window, traveled down a hallway, through a second window into another building, down another hallway, through a third window, across an alley, through a fourth window, and finally found the enemy sniper who thought he was safe behind multiple walls and buildings. "Holy—" Anderson couldn't finish. "That's impossible. I watched it happen, and it's still impossible." "One more," Ashley said, already calculating the final shot. The last enemy sniper had taken the most protected position, inside a reinforced building with no direct sight lines from any feasible shooting position. But Ashley had noticed something on the satellite imagery, a metal ventilation duct that ran from the roof to the room where the sniper was positioned. "You're not," Anderson began. "I am," Ashley confirmed. "Range 2,517 meters to the vent opening. The bullet will need to ricochet twice inside the duct to reach the target. Angle of incidence equals angle of reflection, accounting for velocity decay and deformation from the impacts." It was beyond impossible. It was theoretical physics made practical, the kind of shot that would be dismissed as fantasy if anyone else claimed it. But Ashley Mitchell, Ghost 7, didn't deal in fantasy. She dealt in precision. She calculated for 5 full minutes, accounting for every variable, every possibility. Anderson watched in amazement as she made adjustments so minute they seemed meaningless, but he knew each one was crucial for the shot she was attempting. Finally, she was ready. "Send it," Anderson whispered. Ashley fired. The bullet flew across 1.5 miles, entered the ventilation duct at precisely the correct angle, ricocheted off the metal walls exactly as calculated, and found the last enemy sniper in a room he thought was impregnable. "All targets eliminated," Anderson confirmed, his voice filled with awe. 12 for 12. Ghost 7 is perfect." Below in the school complex, Team 6 had monitored the elimination of enemy snipers. With the Overwatch threat removed, they began their breakout, fighting through the remaining ground forces with renewed energy. Helicopters that had been waiting outside the threat envelope swooped in, guns blazing, as the extraction began. But the mission wasn't over. Enemy reinforcements were approaching, and someone needed to keep them at bay while Team 6 escaped. "We've got company," Anderson warned, spotting enemy vehicles approaching from the east. "Technicals with mounted guns, maybe 200 fighters." Ashley shifted her rifle, beginning to engage the vehicles at extreme range. Engine blocks were destroyed, drivers eliminated, mounted guns disabled. Each shot was precise, designed to create maximum chaos and delay. The enemy advance stalled, then stopped, then turned into a retreat as fighters realized they were facing something beyond their ability to combat. "Team 6 is clear," came the radio call. "All personnel extracted. Ghost 7, what's your status?" "Still breathing," Ashley replied, the first words she'd spoken over the radio during the entire operation. "Your extraction is inbound. ETA 5 minutes. 5 minutes. They just had to survive 5 more minutes. But the enemy had finally located their position through the sustained firing, and mortar rounds began impacting around them. Ashley and Anderson pressed themselves into the shallow depression as explosions walked closer to their position. "This is getting sporty," Anderson said with remarkable calm as dirt and rocks rained down on them. A mortar round impacted just 20 meters away, the concussion leaving them both temporarily deafened. Shrapnel whistled overhead, and Ashley felt the sting of metal fragments hitting her vest. The ceramic plates held, but the impact would leave bruises for weeks. Then Ashley heard it, the distinctive sound of helicopter rotors. The extraction bird was coming in fast and low, a modified Black Hawk with door gunners laying down suppressing fire. It flared and landed just 50 meters from their position. "Move!" Ashley shouted, pulling Anderson to his feet. They ran, Ashley leading while Anderson followed, both bent low as bullets cracked past their heads. The door gunner was firing continuously, the miniguns roared, drowning out everything else. They dove into the helicopter, Ashley pulling Anderson in behind her as the aircraft immediately lifted off, banking hard to avoid an RPG that sailed past where they had been seconds before. "We're clear," the pilot announced. "All personnel extracted. Mission complete." Mission complete. 2 words that meant 48 American warriors were going home to their families. 2 words that justified everything Ashley had given up, everything she had become. She looked at Chief Anderson, who was grinning, despite the blood on his face and the ringing in his ears. "Not bad for an old man," she said. "Not bad for a bartender," he replied. The flight back to the staging base was quiet, each of them processing what had just happened. Ashley had eliminated 12 professional snipers and stopped an enemy battalion, all with 12 perfectly placed shots and supporting fire. It was the kind of performance that would become legend in the special operations community, whispered about but never officially acknowledged. At the base, Team 6 was waiting for them. 48 warriors, battered and exhausted but alive, stood in formation as Ashley and Anderson disembarked. As one, they saluted, not the casual greeting between operators, but a formal, respectful acknowledgement of what had been done for them. The team leader, a lieutenant commander whose name Ashley would never know officially, stepped forward. "Ghost 7, he said simply. "We owe you everything." "You owe me nothing," Ashley replied. "This is what we do. We stand for each other. We bring everyone home." Medical personnel wanted to examine both Ashley and Anderson, but aside from minor shrapnel wounds and exhaustion, both were remarkably unscathed. The mission that should have been impossible had been completed with minimal casualties on the American side. Commander Thompson was waiting with transportation back to California. "Outstanding work," she said. "Both of you." "Just doing the job," Ashley replied, though they all knew it had been far more than that. The flight home was longer, or seemed longer, as the adrenaline faded and exhaustion set in. Ashley dozed fitfully, dreams of bullets and calculations mixing with memories of Murphy's Tavern and the quiet life she had tried to build. Chief Anderson sat beside her, writing in his notebook, not tactical notes this time, but what appeared to be a letter. "Writing your memoirs?" Ashley asked. "Writing to my grandson," Anderson replied. "Telling him about the day I worked with a legend. Telling him that age is just a number when you have a purpose. Telling him that warriors never really retire. They landed at the same airfield they had departed from just 36 hours earlier, though it felt like a lifetime had passed. Murphy was waiting with the 2 SUVs the Marines had procured, and the smile on his face when he saw them both walking off the aircraft was worth more than any medal. "Told you you'd come back," he said, embracing Ashley fiercely. "Never doubted it," she lied. The drive back to Murphy's Tavern was quiet, each of them lost in their own thoughts. Ashley stared out the window at the familiar California landscape, trying to reconcile the woman who had just eliminated 12 enemy snipers with the bartender who served beer and listened to customers' problems. At the tavern, the 5 Marines were waiting. They jumped to their feet when Ashley entered, and she could see they had been anxiously awaiting news. "Mission complete," she said simply. "Team 6 is home." The relief on their faces was palpable. Blake stepped forward, still holding the challenge coin she had given him. "We monitored what we could through unofficial channels," he said. 12 confirmed kills at ranges that shouldn't be possible, threading shots through buildings. "You're not just a legend, you're something beyond that." "I'm a bartender," Ashley corrected. "A bartender who occasionally does favors for old friends." But even as she said it, she knew things had changed. The carefully constructed normal life she had built was fractured now. Ghost 7 had returned, and once awakened, that part of her wouldn't easily go back to sleep. Her phone buzzed, another encrypted message, this time from a number she recognized, someone from her SEAL team days, someone who knew what she was capable of. "Trouble in Somalia? Could use Ghost 7's help." Ashley looked at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. But she knew there would be others. There would always be others. Because once the word spread that Ghost 7 was operational again, every unit in trouble would want her help. So, what now? Murphy asked, reading her expression. Now I pour drinks and pretend to be normal, Ashley replied, until the next time someone needs the impossible. And there will be a next time, Chief Anderson said. It wasn't a question. Ashley nodded. There always is. The 5 Marines prepared to leave, but Ashley called Blake back. Keep the coin, she said. You've earned it now. You've seen what real service means. Not just the glory and excitement, but the weight and responsibility. Remember tonight. Remember that assumptions and ego nearly made you the villain in someone else's story. Be better. I will, Blake promised. We all will. As the Marines left, Ashley looked around Murphy's tavern, at the photos on the walls, at Murphy and Anderson who had risked everything to support her, at the place that had become home. I need to tell you all something, she said, about Operation Crimson Dawn, about why I really left. Murphy poured 3 glasses of whiskey, even one for Ashley, though she wouldn't drink it. The investigation was right about one thing, she began. I did violate orders, but not the way they claimed. After Marcus died, after I'd been shooting for hours, something in me broke, or maybe something finally fixed itself. I realized I had become a perfect killing machine, but I had lost my humanity in the process. Each shot was just mathematics, each kill just a number added to my count. She paused, staring at the untouched whiskey. When the extraction helicopters arrived and the SEALs were safe, I had a choice. There were still enemy fighters in the area, still targets I could eliminate. Command was screaming at me to continue engaging, to maximize enemy casualties while we had the advantage. But I stopped. I put down my rifle and refused to take another shot. Why? Anderson asked softly. Because they were running away, Ashley replied. They were no longer a threat. Killing them would have been murder, not combat. But Command didn't see it that way. To them, every enemy fighter was just a future threat to be eliminated. My refusal to continue killing was seen as dereliction of duty. Murphy nodded slowly, understanding. So, they court-martialed you for having a conscience. They court-martialed me for remembering that I was human, Ashley corrected. The charges were dropped because the SEALs I saved raised holy hell, but the message was clear. Ghost 7 was too independent, too likely to make moral judgments in the field. They wanted a weapon, not a warrior with a conscience. And now? Anderson asked. Now I choose when to fight and when to walk away, Ashley replied. I choose which causes are worth killing for. I choose to be Ashley Mitchell, who sometimes becomes Ghost 7, rather than Ghost 7 pretending to be Ashley Mitchell. Her phone buzzed again. Another message, another crisis, another request for the impossible. This time she didn't even look at it. Tonight, I'm just a bartender, she said, moving behind the bar. Anyone want a drink? Murphy and Anderson sat at the bar, and Ashley served them with the same precision she had used to eliminate enemy snipers hours before. The 3 warriors, young, middle-aged, and old, sat in comfortable silence, understanding that some bonds were forged in fire and sealed in blood. Outside, the California night was peaceful, the sound of distant traffic, and the occasional helicopter from Camp Pendleton, the only reminders of the larger world beyond Murphy's tavern. But Ashley knew that peace was temporary, that somewhere out there, another crisis was building, another situation that would require Ghost 7's particular skills. Her phone buzzed once more. This time, the message was different. Not a request for help, but something else entirely. We know who you are. We know where you are. The past isn't finished with you. Ashley looked at the message for a long moment, then showed it to Murphy and Anderson. Looks like my retirement is definitely over, she said with a slight smile that didn't reach her eyes. We've got your back, Murphy said immediately. Whatever comes, we face it together, Anderson added. Ashley nodded, grateful for their support, but knowing that ultimately, this was her fight. Someone from her past, someone with a grudge or an agenda, had found her. The peaceful life she had tried to build was about to face its greatest threat. But tonight, she wouldn't worry about that. Tonight, she would serve drinks and talk with Murphy, C. and Anderson about everything except war. Tomorrow, she would begin preparing for whatever was coming. Because if her past had taught her anything, it was that threats didn't go away when ignored. They had to be faced, confronted, and eliminated. The door to Murphy's tavern opened, and a customer walked in. just a regular person looking for a drink after a long day. Ashley served them with a smile, the perfect bartender, giving no hint of the warrior beneath. "What'll it be?" she asked. "Just a beer," the customer replied. "Long day at work?" Ashley poured the beer with practiced ease. "Tell me about it," she said, though her long day had involved eliminating 12 enemy snipers in Syria. The customer began talking about office politics and deadline stress, and Ashley listened with apparent interest, nodding at the right moments, making sympathetic sounds. This too was a form of service, being normal, being present, being human for people who had no idea that their peaceful lives were protected by warriors like her. Chief Anderson eventually left, promising to stay in touch, to be ready if she needed him again. "Once a warrior, always a warrior," he said as he departed. "Call if you need me." Murphy closed the bar at 2 a.m., later than usual, neither of them quite ready to end this day that had changed everything. "You know you can't stay here," Murphy said as they cleaned up. "If someone's coming for you, this place will be ground zero." "I know," Ashley replied, "but I'm not running, not anymore. If they want Ghost 7, they'll get her, but on my terms, in my time." They finished closing, and Ashley walked to her small apartment, hyper-aware now of every shadow, every sound. The peaceful anonymity she had cherished was gone, replaced by the familiar vigilance of someone who knew they were being hunted. In her apartment, she opened the closet where her operational gear was stored. She had thought she was keeping it as a memorial to who she had been. Now she understood she had been keeping it because she knew this day would come, the day when Ashley Mitchell would have to become Ghost 7, not for a mission, but for survival. Her phone buzzed one final time. This time, it was Blake Harrison. "Ma'am, I mean Ashley, we're here if you need us. All 5 of us. We owe you that much." Ashley smiled at the message. The 5 Marines who had threatened her hours ago were now offering to protect her. It was a transformation that gave her hope. Hope that people could change, could learn, could become better. She typed back, "Stay ready, things might get interesting." Then she began her preparations. Weapons cleaned and loaded, escape routes planned, safe houses identified, contact with people who could help if things went sideways. Because whoever was coming for her, whoever thought they could threaten Ghost 7, was about to learn what happened when you cornered one of the world's most dangerous warriors. Ashley Mitchell, bartender, was ready to serve drinks and live a quiet life. But Ghost 7, legendary sniper, was ready for war. And depending on what tomorrow brought, the world would meet one or the other. Or perhaps, for the first time, they would meet both, the warrior and the woman, the legend and the human, the ghost and the flesh. Because Ashley had learned something important during her 2 years of attempted retirement. You couldn't separate the parts of yourself. You could only choose which part to show at any given moment. Tomorrow would bring challenges. But tonight, she stood at her window, looking out at the peaceful town that had no idea what kind of warrior walked among them. She thought about the 48 SEALs now home with their families because of what she and Chief Anderson had done. She thought about the 5 Marines who had learned valuable lessons about assumptions and respect. She thought about Murphy and Anderson, warriors from different generations who had stood ready to fight beside her. This was what service really meant. Not the glory or recognition, not the medals or commendations, but the quiet satisfaction of knowing you had made a difference, of knowing that somewhere people were alive because of what you had done. Her phone sat silent now, no more messages coming through. But Ashley knew it was just the calm before the storm. Someone was coming for her, someone from her past who wanted to settle old scores or create new problems. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had threatened her when she was trying to be peaceful. They had forced her to become Ghost 7 again. And once awakened, Ghost 7 didn't go back to sleep until all threats were eliminated. Ashley checked her rifle one more time, then set it within easy reach of her bed. Tomorrow would bring what it would bring, but tonight she would sleep peacefully, knowing she was ready for whatever came. The ghost was awake, the warrior was ready, and anyone who thought they could threaten her was about to learn why Ghost 7 had become legend. The story would continue. It always did for warriors like Ashley Mitchell. There would be other missions, other crises, other calls for the impossible, but she would face them all with the same precision and determination that had carried her through Hell Week, through 12 years of special operations, through a night when 5 Marines learned what real service looked like, because that's what warriors do. They stand ready. They answer the call. They bring everyone home, even if no one ever knows their name, even if the only recognition is a deleted message and another successful mission that officially never happened. Even if they have to do it all while serving drinks at a small bar in California, pretending to be normal, pretending the ghost doesn't exist. But ghosts never really disappear. They just wait in the shadows for the moment when they're needed most. And Ghost 7 would always be needed, because in a world full of threats that most people never knew existed, someone had to stand on the wall. Someone had to make the impossible shots. Someone had to be the ghost that protected the living. That someone was Ashley Mitchell, bartender, warrior, legend. Ghost 7, always ready, always watching, always waiting for the next call to service. The end, until the next mission begins.